Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Tuesday Talks with Andrew. So I know it has been a hot minute since I have done a YouTube video. I've just been really busy, some short life updates. I started working full-time again, so I'm back at a school. I'm working really long hours. I have 9, sometimes 10-hour days, and I'm currently still in prep. It's been a very long prep. So I just have a lot on my plate right now, and my main priority is work and prep and taking care of my little family here in Texas and everything else. And obviously with the fall challenge coming up with Marissa and Kristen, I just have a lot going on right now. So I promise that I will be better with YouTube. I feel like I say that all the time, but I promise I will. But anyway, let's get into today's video. So Andrew is going to talk a little bit about his perspective on warm-up shows and how he feels about that as a coach. So hopefully after watching this video, you have a little bit of a better idea of how to plan your show schedule and kind of your feelings going into certain shows. Anyway, so here's Andrew.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Tuesday Talks, and what is probably going to be one of the shorter videos that we've done in the series, just because we wanted to touch on a topic that's probably not as complex as some of the nutrition and training things that we've talked about in the past, but still pretty important for anybody out there that's doing a contest prep in whatever various division you may be pursuing. And it kind of came from Christy and I talking about her current prep and some different ideas that we were throwing around as far as when we wanted to shoot for her season opener and whether we wanted to shoot for certain shows that might be a little bit closer or farther from our initial timeline when we were trying to kind of lay out everything and see where we were going to go. With that, the idea of warm-up shows came into the conversation, and like I said, we were bouncing around a few different ideas, and it seemed like a pretty good idea just to kind of touch on in this video series, since it's a topic that comes up pretty often. I see a lot of athletes on social media, and then just athletes that I've worked with in the past, have a few different opinions on it. I thought maybe my thoughts on it might benefit you guys and just kind of throw up some considerations that you can take into account whenever you're deciding what's best for you in your particular situation. With warm-up shows, I would say, the long story short, I typically don't suggest them. In most cases, I'll say most because, as I'll get into in a few minutes, a few things kind of come into play that might make it a little bit more ideal for someone else. I would say I normally suggest not doing them simply because anyone that competes, we're very goal driven, we're very driven by how we look, obviously, because that's kind of the point of competing, is to look your best and to look better than other people on stage. But with that, we do this and we put a lot of time in the off season, and then especially during prep. There's a lot of very challenging months ahead of us during a contest prep. So after all of that work, partially from a coach's perspective and then partially being an athlete myself that's competed and plans to compete more in the future, you want to look your best on stage, obviously. You don't want to put in all that work, and then even though other people's opinions don't really matter in the grand scheme of life, we still want to look good in front of the people that are going to see us on stage, both in our photos that we'll probably be sharing on social media, and then obviously the people that are seeing the show live. So from a coach's perspective, admittedly, obviously anyone that I put on stage, I want them to be at their 100% best, because that reflects me as a coach and the decisions that I've made and some of the strategies that I've helped implement with my athletes. So with warm-up shows, a bit selfishly, it tends to give a poor reflection on the coach's ability to properly coach their athlete, and then the athlete's ability to really step on stage looking their absolute best. So even though you and your coach know that it's a warm-up show, know that there's still going to be some more improvements before you really hit your first major show, everyone else doesn't necessarily see that. And again, it's not that I put a lot of emphasis on what other people think, but at the same time, I want to look my best when I step on stage, and I want my athletes that I work with to look their best. From that perspective, I really prefer to just wait, give a few more weeks, however much time is necessary, to make sure the athlete is 100% ready to step on stage, and then go for however many shows that we're looking to shoot for that season. And luckily, with bodybuilding being as popular as ever, there's more shows than ever, and there seems to be a show every weekend, and especially for someone that has the ability to travel, the chances of finding a show that worked for you are even greater. So with that many shows out there, I don't think doing warm-up shows are as good of an idea, because you can usually just wait and still get in a lot of shows for your season. That being said though, there are a few considerations that may come into effect with some athletes that might make a warm-up show a little bit more reasonable to do. I would say, as a very general rule of thumb, this is going to differ between a lot of people and differ among people that have a really good idea of what their true stage weight is probably going to be versus people that might be newer to the sport and not quite sure what stage weight they will end up being at. So it's a little bit harder to estimate. But if you know within a pretty good range what you're probably going to end up weighing towards the end of your prep, then if you're under maybe 3 or 4 pounds away from your ideal stage weight, you're at that point going to look pretty good. Obviously those last few pounds are going to make a big difference, but in general you're going to look pretty good. You're going to be in a pretty good spot. So if it's something where you don't have a lot of stage experience, this might be your first or second season competing, and you have some pretty big shows planned for later in the year, then doing a warm-up show might not be a bad idea if you have plenty of time before those important shows. Obviously, getting on stage is pretty nerve-wracking, even for experienced people. There's definitely nerves that are attached to the show. So getting that experience early before the shows that you really want to do well, just getting used to being on stage, getting used to posing in front of people without a mirror versus posing in your house, kind of, especially if you're ready early enough and lean enough to be able to practice, do basically a mock peak week. Those things can help. Like I said, if you're conditioned enough to pursue that stage experience, the peak week practice can help you and your coach, if you're using a coach, to kind of hone in everything and to really get you into a good spot to where when the serious show hits, you're ready to go and you're a little bit more comfortable, you're used to everything, you kind of know what to expect, things like that. So if you're within a few pounds of what you likely will be right before your important shows and your shows that you definitely want to bring your 100%, then it's possible that there could be some benefits from it, but I would just say, again, if you have plenty of time, you prepped early enough, you have plenty of time before your upcoming really big shows, then do it. But if your timeline isn't all that flexible, you don't have quite as much time as you might like. Additionally, I would completely not do the warm-up show simply because during that peak week, the golden general rule a lot of coaches will tell you is don't expect to make changes during the peak week. Obviously you're going to carb up, you're going to fill out. Those kind of changes are obviously going to occur because that's the point. But as far as getting leaner during peak week, if you're not lean enough going into peak week's not going to do you very much good as far as helping you lean out anymore before you start carbing up, depending on the type of peak week that you follow. That week you can pretty much set aside as I'm not going to get any more lean during that time as you approach your serious shows. So that week you're going to make improvements in your physique by carbing up, by filling out, doing the little things that help you make sure you look your best on stage, but you're not going to get leaner during peak week. So if you're doing one or in some cases multiple warm-up shows, you're prolonging how long it's going to take you to really get stage ready, because those are weeks that you're losing that you could otherwise just continue dieting as you were and losing 1 pound, 2 pounds per week, however much you're able to lose. If you have plenty of time, you're pretty close to being ready, pretty far out, then that extra experience, that mock peak week, can help you. Then again, you can always do a mock peak week without doing a show if you're ready in time, which is usually what I would do instead for most of the athletes that I work with. The other caveat that I would say is if you're pretty close to your stage weight and the show is very local to you, if it's within a few minutes driving distance, some people will be prepping and the timelines just didn't match up and they had to push their actual shows to later in the season, but they happen to have a show right in town where they live that's, like I said, the timelines just didn't match up, but it's so close. So if they're within a few pounds of stage weight, then travel costs are going to be down. You're not going to have to get a hotel room. You can usually get out pretty cheap just jumping into that show since it's so local and you can just stay at your house and prepare. In that kind of case, doing those warm-up shows make a little bit more sense because you're that close to it. You're not going to have to add a lot of expenses to your season. You're at home. You're going to be able to pretty much handle everything properly. You're not going to lose days from traveling and whatnot. So you can kind of do a little bit of a mock peak week, maybe not a full peak week. Just do a few major things to make sure you look good enough on stage, but maybe not do everything that you would during a normal peak week. That way you're not slowing down the rate of fat loss quite as much. If it's local to you and it's within a reasonable timeline, again, that's going to depend on the person and the situation. That could be another situation to where, sure, go ahead and do a warm-up show, and depending on what your coach thinks and where you are physically and how much time you have to play with. So again, I said depending several times during this video, and that's because it really does depend on a lot, and there's no hard answer for that. But again, I would say it really comes down to, do you want to compete often in your season, but only look really, really good a portion of those shows? Or do you want to compete less often, once, twice, maybe 3 times, but make sure you're 100% ready, and every time you step on stage, you're looking the best you possibly can, and you're representing yourself and whatever team or whatever supplement brand that you're representing to the best of your ability? I would say, again, we all have our reasons for competing. Some of those are pretty vain in one way or another, whether we like to admit that or not. We want to look very good. A lot of us are very interested in becoming sponsored athletes or getting in with different companies and things like that. So especially if that's your case, if you really have big plans in the industry or whatever the case might be for you in your career, making sure that every time you step on stage, you're looking your absolute best, to me is a lot more important than just being on stage more often. Being on stage more often but not looking as good, you can imagine how that's not really going to impress a lot of people. So again, if your body weight compared to your stage weight is within a few pounds, and you know pretty confidently what your stage weight is going to be, or I should say the weight before peak week, since your body weight can fluctuate quite a bit during peak week. If you're within a few pounds and you're confident about where you are versus your timeline, it's doable. If it's within your neck of the woods, right in town or the next town over or something like that, and you're pretty close, then it's reasonable to do it. But if you're cutting that timeline close, if you have some other shows that you really, really want to make sure you look 100% and you don't have a whole lot of time to play with, then I would say totally skip those warm-up shows. Make sure that you're looking your best and at your full potential during a few less shows in the year, but make sure you're looking your best at those shows, and I'll kind of go from there. Because at the end of the day, you could technically step on stage at any point. You could be 20 pounds over stage weight and step on stage if you wanted to pay the fees and sign up, and no one's going to tell you otherwise, but you're not going to look, something's going to be off on that stage when you're 20 pounds over stage weight and everyone else is stage ready. So you can compete anytime and be in a show, but most of us don't want that. We want to compete in a show and do really well at that show and look our very best. So that's what I would keep in mind whenever you're trying to figure out exactly what shows you're going to do and what kind of timeline you want to work with. And as a last note, you obviously don't want to have to speed up your timeline just to get ready for a show. Like we've talked about in previous installments of this series, as far as determining contest prep length, you want to lose roughly 1 to 2 pounds, no more than 2 pounds a week, to really ensure health markers and your muscle retention and things like that are kept in check. So you don't want to speed up the timeline either just to get into certain shows. So being patient, making sure you have several shows lined up, several possibilities that you can kind of pick and choose from depending on how things go. To me, that's a lot more important than just trying to rush into warm-up shows and things like that. Hopefully this helps you guys. Like I said, there's a lot of different things you can consider, but luckily there's a few rules of thumbs, like being 3 or 4 pounds over stage weight or how close it is, that can kind of help you get a better idea of your specific situation and what's best for you personally. But again, I hope that helps you all. Obviously, if you have any topics that you want us to cover in the future, please just comment below, email one of us, tag us on social media, whatever. Obviously, I'm happy to give my 2 cents for what that's worth to you all. And we definitely want to help everyone that's following and subscribing to Christina's channel, and just go from there. But thanks again for checking it out. I really appreciate all of you that have kept up with the series and given really good feedback on these so far, and it's been a lot of fun covering the topics for sure. But until next time, guys, we'll talk to you soon, and thanks again.
So I hope that you enjoyed the video and you learned a lot and you have a better idea about how to schedule your shows for the season. To give you guys a little bit more information into my prep and my prep with Andrew, it's been a very long and slow journey. Granted, I had my wedding, so everything, for my wedding, so bachelorette, bridal shower, rehearsal dinner, wedding. I just had a lot of events kind of thrown into my prep, which we knew going into the prep. We knew that I wasn't going to be, bring my Tupperware to my wedding. Like, I was going to enjoy myself, have a glass or 2 of wine and, enjoy my wedding cake. Like, I told him, I was like, I'm not giving that up during this prep. So we built in some extra time. It's just taken a lot longer. My body just hasn't responded very well to certain things. And speaking of, I had a local show that I was very set on doing because it was so close to my house. It probably would have been like a 10-minute drive. I wouldn't have to pay for accommodations or anything like that. It just would have been so convenient. But the timing just didn't work out. My body didn't respond in time. We thought we could possibly be ready, but there were some national level judges at the show, and looking back, obviously I was disappointed that I wasn't going to be able to do this show. But if I had gone and showcased my physique for the season opener And even though it was a warm-up and it was just for me and Andrew, I would have been showcasing my physique to national level judges. And I know, and Andrew knows, that that's not what I would want to showcase, even though it was a warm-up show. So I'm really grateful and glad that we did not do that show, and we're waiting a few more weeks. Hopefully my season opener will be in like 4 weeks. This girl is ready to eat and get on stage. But anyway, I hope that gives you guys some more information. Give it a thumbs up if you like the video. If there are any other topics that you would like Andrew and I to cover in our next series, please let us know. We've gotten a lot of good feedback on this, but we really want to hear from you guys. So anyway, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye guys.